I'd like to welcome those of you who are watching to the second of our 101 series interviews with senior Gamaliel organizers. Again, my name is Reverend Cynthia Gerald. I am the Senior Advisor for Funding Strategies and External Affairs in the Gamaliel Network. And I am so pleased to have Juan Soto, who is Gamaliel's Organizing Director and the person with the second longest tenure in the network, here today to talk about community organizing, what it is, what it means to him, and what the opportunities are for those of you who are either interested in choosing that as a career path or in investing in the work that we do, organizing the communities that we are a part of. So Juan, welcome, and thank you very much for saying yes.
Gracias, Cynthia. Absolutely, I'm happy to be here.
Good, good. So I've just given your title, your name and your title, but I'd like to hear from you a little bit more about your role in this network. And in fact, I know you have a lot of hats that you wear in this network. So if you could say something about the role or roles that you play and your experience over the years in this network. Tell us a little bit if you'll give us the number of years you've been organizing, that'd be terrific as well.
Matter of fact, I think, today is September 1st, but, next week on the 9th of September, I will turn 30 years old, believe it or not, but 30 years old in organizing years. And a little bit about my role. It's taken me these 3 decades to get to where I am, but I have shared and I've said this, kind of in the past, that when I first entered into organizing, I was judged, I was agitated, I was, moved to say, well, you're young, you're naive. What do you know about the world? Is what Mary Gonzalez and Greg Galuzzo said. I wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to have been, in a corporate job or in another not-for-profit, but I chose here because somebody like Joe Mariano and others invested in me and agitated me to be here in this role.
Okay. Say a little bit about your experience with the network. What are, as you look back, what are some of the things that you remember that are sort of highlights in your career?
Sure. You said that this is a career path, and actually I describe kind of my work and engagement with Gamaliel. At first, in the first 5 years, I said, well, this is a job. And then that kind of evolved to me then saying, well, maybe this is a career after, 15 years. And then I would say that this is, a vocation after the 25th year. But now I'm, already at the scale of saying decades and not years. This is actually a ministry. It's a ministry calling that is very rooted in my own faith and my own convictions and values of how I want to see the world. And, some of that work that I've done over the years have been very transformational, not only for the people that I engage, the leaders and the organizations that I've built, but it's really a transformation of myself in this work. And that's what has kept me centered here at Gamaliel, is the rootedness of your own transformation, as well as the transformation of others. So have I built a school? Yes, I built a school. I can campaign with parents in Pilsen. Have I created organizations? Of course, we created a statewide organization called Gamaliel of Illinois and connected that to Iowa, and created, the Johnson County Interfaith Coalition. And that is destined, along with QCI, to create another statewide organization. Highlights to me, have revolved around the people and the other organizers that I've been working with. You over the years around our immigration work and campaigns, people like, Ana Garcia Ashley and Beatriz Garcia and our leader of, with Pablo Tapia, that,
Mhm.
He is, one that could hold his own with any other organizer in any other network in any other movement in the country. So the transformation is very key to the work that we're doing and continue to do. And Gamaliel brings that edge in organizing, because we care in a very compassionate way, but very deliberate way, to transform the individual, to actually transform community.
That's really lovely, Juan. I mean, what you're talking about is legacy, right? And the question that I want to ask you next, I think, is really tied to that. So what is the real value of community organizing? I've heard you use the language of transformation, and without using the language, you were actually describing legacy, right? This continuation of some really important stuff that's going on. So could you say a few words about the value of community organizing?
Yeah, actually, I just recently, graduated with a master's in pastoral studies. That was so important to me in my kind of faith journey, as I'm discerning, my own work and in collaboration with others. And the value here is the value of doing this in community. I don't do this work in isolation. I don't do this work because of a title, but I do this work because it is the value of being in relationship with others. And that transforms, not only myself and others, but it's the pathway to legacy, to engage, clergy, African American clergy, Latino clergy, white clergy, different denominations, interfaith, ecumenical, and I wouldn't have had that experience if I had not chosen this path for myself.
Okay.
And so that really, ties to the value of being in community with one another.
Yeah, I think that came through loud and clear to me when I went through Gamaliel's national leadership training. It's been 12 plus years since I went through national leadership training. And I remember you very clearly in the training room. You were one of those people, for people who are watching right now, if they haven't heard stories about our training, there's this story about how it's sometimes scary, because we're being agitated to be truthful to ourselves and truthful about our purpose and passion and all of that kind of stuff. But I do remember very clearly the importance of community and relationships, which I think began to shape my own work. And you were a part of that. But I do remember one particular training that you led at the National Leadership Training, and that was Path to Power. And in the Path to Power training, you tell the story about your own life and journey as a child, first of all, who emigrated to this country from Mexico with your family. Do you want to share a bit of that with this group of people, and then talk a little bit about how your life as an immigrant in the US has really impacted the way you organize and your choice of organizing as a career?
Yeah, actually, as a ministry, not just as a career. Right? It's a ministry for me. It took me quite some time to be able to tell that story. And the story that you're referring to is, I remember being in kindergarten, being pulled out of school for a day to go and interpret for my dad and his boss. And he had not, later on, I understood this as an older as an adult. But the reason that I went was because my dad had not been paid for over a month in wages, and he was demanding that his boss pay him. And my dad did not speak Spanish. Actually, my dad was illiterate. The only way he was able to sign his name is with an X. So I was placed in a situation where I had to interpret for him. And I see these two grown adult men yelling at each other. And it was a fierce, very impactful, very traumatizing experience for me, having to be in the middle of these two men yelling at each other. And I had no idea what they were yelling about. Being a kindergartner, I still did not understand English, let alone be able to interpret. And walking out, and my dad is so furious at the situation that he bends down and he grabs me by the lips, pinches them to the point that I bled. And he says, "Why are we sending you to school if you cannot interpret for me?"
Wow. Wow.
And I tell that story because that kind of shut me down from being open and talking, and it physically caused drama for me, or trauma for me, for a long time. And if it wasn't for week-long training that I went through, that really helped me understand the politicization of that incident, that he was not trying to shut me down, but that he wanted me to be stronger and have a stronger voice. And that has impacted me to the point where, in the work that I do in immigration, I do not want to be, and I do not expect, and I do not put leaders to be shut down in their own voice. So we have to politicize that anger in a way that allows others to lift up their voice. And anybody that says, "Well, I can't speak," or "I'm afraid to speak," the biggest risk I have is speaking in public. And I said, BS. You have what it takes, and we are not going to rob you from that, lifting up your own voice.
Yeah.
And that I carry that with me every single day.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Juan. And it goes back to, right, the importance of organizing. One of the critical things is getting people to the point of telling their own stories and owning their stories, right? Right. And you've just illustrated that so beautifully. Can you say, for folks who are watching right now, some really important things that you have learned from your organizing experience?
Yeah. I came into organizing at the age of 22, and I wish I had an organizer in my life when I was a teenager, even earlier on in mine. And the reason I say that is because, I was destined to be a farmer, to take over my dad's, farm back in Mexico. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to be called to be powerful. Nobody in my life was saying you should be powerful, and you have every right to become a powerful individual. And the transformation, as I'm sharing, is that organizing and organizers give you an opportunity and a license to become powerful that you may not even realize, but you have it. As we say, we cannot empower somebody. The empowerment comes when the decision of that individual, is done to say, enough is enough. I am going to step into a power position. I am going to demand my worth, and I am going to live out my values in the public arena.
That's great. Thank you. So let's move on with these learnings, right? Because you are right now in a position where you are working with brand new organizers in the network. As director of organizing, you're running a cohort of new organizers. We're trying to build a deep bench so that we can have serious impact on our communities. What would you say to someone who's looking at organizing as a possibility for their own path forward? What advice would you give? And I suspect you're giving that all the time to these folks, but what advice would you give to this audience that we have assembled about organizing?
You know, as I reflect on that question, matter of fact, earlier today I had a meeting with the cohort, and the learnings that I am myself am learning from them because we're in community. And the fear factor really is internally rather than somebody being imposing fear on you. So the struggles, at week-long training, we talk about having the demons in our own heads. And that's the wrestling. And that's where I think, the opportunity to engage in this work is, do you want to struggle with your own demons to overcome them, to wrestle them down, to tame them down? And some of them we could get rid of, right? And some are going to live with us, but they're going to have a very, small voice. So I encourage anybody that wants to engage in community organizing, because it is about their own transformation. It's really saying, what are the demons that you want to struggle with? It's you. It's the, we project our own insecurities on others rather than struggling with our own insecurities. And most of the time, they're just in our heads, and they're like, well, I didn't know I could do this. But it's those breakthrough moments that I see in a transformation, of some organizers, even the last 9 months, Moneth out of California, or somebody like Tishiana. We are moving people to claim their power in the public arena. Myra Hernandez out of QCI is doing that. Gisela is trying to struggle in those moments, right? Vicky Vickers, right? The fact that she was holding herself back from having a very powerful, deep conversation with her own Catholic bishop. And now she's able to, oh, that was not that bad. Actually, it was pretty easy once I understood, what we needed to do, what we needed to engage, and how to engage. So it's those moments, right? It's the overcoming those fears and that anxiety really is, self-imposed, but it's how do you have those breakthroughs? Yeah. And that gives me energy, that gives me hope for the work that we're doing. And the transformation of these leaders, like you said, there's a bench of organizers that we're developing, mentoring, and inviting. The bench is long. You're invited to sit on that bench, but not only sit, but we got to kick you off that bench so you're actually doing the work in that arena. Yeah,
that's great. That's great. It is exciting to watch somebody make a breakthrough, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I don't want to end this time together without acknowledging that we are in a critical moment politically in this country. And you wear another hat in this network as the staff for the Civil Rights of Immigrants campaign, which is, nearly 2 decades old, and we're still fighting for immigrant rights. But we are in a moment, and I would love for you to take advantage of this opportunity and this audience to actually declare what that moment is and what we need to do.
Well, absolutely. as an immigrant myself, this anger runs through my veins. The anger of this draconian immigration system. I live it. I still have family that is undocumented and are in that struggle. So this is not only personal, but it's also a place that I don't feel powerful enough to be able to make the change in this, system. But I am powerful enough to be in relationship with other organizers and other leaders that want to make this change. So the political moment is changing our own narrative around what it means to be, love thy neighbor.
Mhm.
Right. And that is so powerful. That's the drive, is how do we love our own neighbor who is undocumented? Yesterday I was doing a one-on-one with an imam out of the Quad Cities, and sharing, him sharing his own story of race, his mosque being riddled with bullets, and the anger that caused not only him personally, but his members in the mosque, and the fear. And it was just like having a conversation with somebody around, how are you going to overcome that? Well, he says, I want to overcome that by joining QCI because they're powerful. We need to have relationships that overcome race and racial tension. And it can't be just, well, immigration is just a one-sided, Mexican issue, as the former, president I shall not name said. But this is about the human aspect of what we're going to build. And that's what we have to bring to the testimonies, to the elected officials, the members of Congress, to the senators, to push politically that says, you know what, there will be consequences if you don't, change this draconian system. And so I'm excited to be in relationship with, folks that are seeing this as an opportunity to rearrange this narrative around immigration. And we need to continue building power. We had a very powerful Spanish week-long training with immigrants affected by this issue. And they turned around in a couple of months, did an action on a member of Congress, and felt, good about that says, bam, we could do this. I didn't think I could do this.
Right. That's great. That's great. Yeah, this is the moment. We've got a House of Representatives that just passed a budget resolution that includes pathway to citizenship for DACA eligible folks, for farm workers, and for TPS folks. And if the Senate moves on that and accepts it and votes it into law, then we have actually made inroads, right, Juan? This is the moment, right?
This is the moment.
Yeah, this is the moment. Well, I want to thank you so much for actually taking time to talk a little bit about your own experience. I know there's a lot more that you could say. You don't cram, decades into 15 minutes of conversation, but I do appreciate what you've shared. And I always appreciate that it comes from deep within you when you share those things. So thank you for that. And I want to just say to the folks who've actually been listening in to this conversation that there will be another conversation that we'll have next week, and will be followed by several more as you continue to meet a number of our senior organizers in this network. So Juan, again, thank you very much.
Gracias, Cynthia. Gracias.